What's up guys, HCZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're starting to profile the decks from Burst of Destiny, and what a set do we have in our hands right now. I think this set is just going to completely change the game because lately the game has been very stale, not a lot of new decks have been gathering so they can actually fight the top meta decks, especially since the ban list didn't affect a lot. But now we have a lot of good new cards, a lot of good new decks, and we're gonna see a shift in the meta. So I think I would start with the most appropriate way. We are going to update heroes, and the reason being is because heroes did get really good support. The problem is that this hero support you're going to see in this profile, you're going to be seeing in 99% of the duels you're going to be seeing. So yeah, I think that's not going to be the most fun thing going down the format. Now it's decent because it's still early, but soon this card is going to be the new Dragoon. But for now, let's see how the hero deck itself has changed because of those new cards. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with the elemental heroes, we have 2 copies of Stratos. Now, a lot of ratios in this build have now been up for debate just because there's so many cards that you need to play that it's pretty much impossible to max out on all the good cards, and Stratos is one of those cards. The problem with Stratos is that there is actually a better normal summon than Stratos in the deck right now, so this is why a lot of people have started cutting copies of Stratos, and I can see why, which is why I'm playing 2 instead of 3. I can see 3 being okay just because sometimes you just need this extra search of pretty much anything you want, but the problem is that Stratos is one of those cards, and in some hands, if it gets stopped, it can be the end of your turn. So yeah, I think Stratos is a really good card, but I'm not sure if it's worth playing at 3. 2 copies of Shadow Mist. This has pretty much been standard forever now. I don't think anyone has played even less or more. It's an easy side out too. Sometimes you side out 1, but Shadow Mist is a really good card because he's the free discard fodder for Faris. You can also send it to the graveyard with Vion to get another search. Really good card. When you send her to the graveyard, sometimes you don't even want to use her effect because there are some combos with Liquid Soldier to bring her back from the graveyard without even using her first effect, and then you can get the Mask Chain search because Dark Law is still and always gonna be one of the most broken ass boss monsters you can have in the game that some decks cannot even do anything against it. So yeah, there's that too. So yeah, 2 Shadow Mist. 1 copy of Liquid Soldier. I've cut Solid Soldier from the deck. I think this card doesn't serve a purpose anymore because this card is just so much better in everything. It has better fuse away effect and it has a better on summon effect. So when this card is fused away, you basically draw 2 and discard 1. And this is not when it's sent to the graveyard as fusion material, it's just when fused away. So if you use it even with Miracle Fusion, you can still get that effect. And of course on normal summon, you can special summon a hero from the graveyard, which is what you're going to be summoning back your Shadow Mist with, so you can get a search for your Mask Chains and then keep rolling. 1 copy of Honest Neos. Of course, you have to play this card. Sometimes this card can just clutch you the wins because it's a free monster that just boosts you from 2500 attacks. So I think you need to play 1. Sometimes it feels a little bit bricky, but I still think that there are a lot of scenarios where you need to have this, and just because it's searchable, you're always going to play 1. Now for the Destiny Hero package, we have of course the 2 copies of Malicious. This is never going to change, and now with the new card, I think this is basically proof that Malicious is going to stay at 2 for pretty much the entirety of the rest of Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is the 1 copy of Destiny Hero Denier we have right here. So Konami found a way to make heroes have 3 copies of Malicious, and only heroes having those 3 copies and not being generic like we used to see with Isolde, Goki and all that stuff. So what this card does is if it's summoned, you can take one of your Destiny Hero monsters that's either banished in your deck or in your graveyard and you place it on top of your deck. So all you do with this is you put the 1 copy of your banished Malicious back into the deck, and then the second copy that you brought with that first copy is now in the graveyard after you fuse away with it or you link away with it, whatever, and then you can banish it to bring out technically a 3rd copy of Malicious from your deck. So this is why this card is absolutely broken, because heroes took a huge hit because of collateral damage just because Malicious went to 2 so many times. But now with this card in the deck, we can always have a 3rd copy of Malicious, and it also has an effect that it special summons itself on the field. So if you have a Destiny Hero monster other than Denier on your field or in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. This effect is once per duel, but the effect to recycle Malicious is not once per duel, so technically you can play even 4 and 5 copies of Malicious in your deck if you bring this back with cards like Cross Crusader. So it's possible to summon as many more Malicious as you want from your deck as long as you keep bringing this card back. But the easiest way is when you bring it back on its own, so you can get back the 3rd copy of Malicious. And 1 copy of Destiny Hero Plasma, because I think this card is just unfair when you combine this with stuff like Dark Law and other cards that basically boost it or protect it from other cards. Then yes, this card is really good. And in Brothers of Legends, we're going to get D-Force, which is going to get Plasma even more insane. So yeah, I can't wait to play that in the deck as well. For the Vision Heroes, we have 3 copies of Faris. Of course, this is the freest extender you can get in the deck. It's just so good. You get your Increase, you get your Vion, you discard your Malicious from your hand, you discard your Shadow Mist from your hand, you get all the searches, everything you need in the graveyard. Such a good card. 1 copy of Increase. This card has been at 2 for the longest time. I never saw the reason why, but at least now people have started realizing that this card is just like one of those cards that you want to play at 1, just like Garnet, just like Cobra when you're playing Predaplans. This card never had the potential to go at 2 because it's another brick in your hand, and yes, if you draw it, it's gonna make Faris dead, but that Faris is not as dead as other engines if you draw the brick. For example, if you were drawing the Garnet, then Brilliant Fusions were dead. With Faris, you can just special summon it on the field to have an extra leg material without even using its effect, to put a Vision Hero in the spell and trap zone, and you can also fuse away with it, so it doesn't really matter if you keep it in your hand, you have a free material for cards like Sunriser and for cards like Trinity. So yeah, I think 1 increase is absolutely fine. Just play 1, because if you play 2, yes, Faris is going to be live more often than when you play 1, but you're going to draw a dead card more often, so I don't think it doesn't make any sense to play 2, and I'm so glad that people are just starting catching up to the idea of playing 1, because this is absolutely the correct way to play. 3 copies of Vion. This is the reason Stratos is not a 3-of anymore, because even if you don't open your Faris, or if you cannot search your Faris, normal summoning Vion is much better than summoning Stratos, because it gives you access to that polymerization, and polymerization is a really good card for the deck right now. Before, it just used to be a brick in the hand that you wanted to search only when you're about to OTK with your Trinity, but now with Sunrise, you have cards that you can summon going first, and cards that actually give you an advantage either by boosting your Plasma, which makes it hard for your opponent to deal with, because Plasma, if it's just a 1900, then basically it doesn't do much, because your opponent can just normal summon a Fractal and crash to your Plasma, and it's not going to do anything unless you have your Honest Neos as well. But yeah, Vion is a much better card right now than Stratos, so this is why you need to play it at 3. And the last monster is 1 copy of Adjusted Gold. Of course, I know this deck is very expensive, but the cards are gonna get reprinted eventually, and I'm sure that all those people who wanted to play heroes like really badly already have those cards, so this is why I'm including everything in the deck. But of course, if you're on a budget, you can start cutting on those expensive engines, but I'm telling you right now, going down this deck profile, you're going to see a lot of expensive cards, and Gold is one of them, but I think it just makes the ceiling of the deck so much higher, just because being able to summon Bane when you have done pretty much everything and your opponent has used all the disruption, you can just blow away their board and summon a monster that is not easy to deal with because it's indestructible, and it also boosts itself. So yeah, Adjusted Gold, really good card. For the spell cards, we have 2 copies of Ecall. You don't need to play 3, basically the same thing with Stratos. This card is a little bit better than Stratos on paper, just because it can search cards like Liquid, your Shadow Mist, your Honest Neos, but still, I don't think it's worth playing at 3, because when you get those cards in your hand once, you really don't want to see them again, and you have so many other ways of searching them too, so I don't think you need to play 3. And of course, playing multiple copies of cards like this makes you lose to Droll as well, even though people don't really play Droll anymore, at least on the main deck, but still, this card, it's really good at 2. 1 copy of Rhoda. Of course, this card can search your Vion as well, so you're gonna play it. 1 copy of Hero Lives. When you open with this card, I think that you should just 99% win of the game, because being able to get access to a Mask Change without even committing to a normal summon means that even if your opponent has Nibiru, you can still get a monster in the graveyard, so you can bring back later to summon your Dark Claw, which is the bane of this deck's existence, because everyone knows that this deck loses to Nibiru, but there are some certain hands that can play around it even without something like Crossout Designator, even by not summoning 5 monsters, or by having follow-up in the graveyard with a Mask Change in hand and an Honest Neos on the hand, so your opponent will not be able to just use Nibiru to run over your Dark Claw, and Hero Lives is one of those cards that makes those fields possible. 2 copies of Polymerization. I like 2 poly just because, like I said, this card is not a brick in the hand anymore. Sometimes when your opponent stops your play, this card is the follow-up, because being able to go into Sunrise by using cards like Liquid to draw cards, maybe you draw Malicious to discard a Malicious, getting your Miracle Fusion to go for your Absolute Zero, this card is not a brick anymore, and being able to have 2 in the deck means that your Vion is a much better card late game too, because it's not like you only have Sunrise to summon. Of course, I also play Trinity, because Trinity is one of the easiest ways to win with the deck, so having 2 means that you can go for a Sunrise turn 1, and then during the late game, you can search another one with your Vion, and go for Trinity to go for game, so I absolutely love 2 polymerizations, and I truly suggest you try it out in your deck. 1 copy of Miracle Fusion. Of course, being able to go into 0 means you have access to Acid, which is basically the cover for all the backrow decks, because this deck, while it does have Stratos for backrow removal, it's not as consistent as just going end phase Mask Change during for Acid, and then blowing up your opponent's backrow, and since you're using 0 for it, you also blow up your opponent's monsters as well, so it's basically a total board nuke. So yeah, Miracle Fusion, broken card, you can add with Sunrise. 1 copy of Dark Calling. Of course, starting with your Dusted Gold, summoning your Bane, not much to explain. 3 copies of Fusion Destiny. This is the card that you're gonna start seeing in pretty much every single duel you're going to be seeing from now on, and it's kind of sad because Konami hasn't learned their lesson about those generic cards being able to be summoned with Anaconda, but the problem is that this card is not even Anaconda reliant, because it's not bad fusion spell like Red Eyes Fusion, which completely locks you from doing anything. You can just do everything you want, and then after you've established your board or your opponent has used the disruption, just slap this on top and you summon your Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. But for this deck, of course, it's also a really good 3-of, even better than any kind of engine you'll see in any other deck, just because you have so many ways to summon stuff, and sometimes you don't even have to summon your Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. Sending Shadow Mist to summon Dangerous must be better sometimes, because when you summon your Liquid Soldier, you can get Shadow Mist back to get your Mask Change, so there's that scenario too. Speaking of Mask Change, of course, you need to max it out, 3 copies. I mean, there's absolutely no reason not to. You need to hard draw this. It can play around hand traps. If you get Veiler or Imperm, you can summon your Dark Claw. You can even summon Blast if the Veiler hits the Stratos, so there's that too. A really good card. 1 copy of Foolish, sending Shadow Mist, basically searches your entire deck, nothing to explain. explain. One copy of Cold Buy. I am not playing Crossout Designator in the main deck just because I feel like this card is much better suited in the side deck. Because when you're playing Crossout Designator, you have to play a lot of cards to make good use out of it going first, and especially game 1, because you don't know what hand drops your opponent is going to be playing. You assume they play Imperm, Ash, and Veiler and stuff like that, but still, some people only main Nibiru and other cards like that, so you have to put a lot of effort in the main deck in order to make use out of it. So I think siding it for other cards is better. So for hand drop coverage, the one called by the grave in the main deck is really good, along with the other card I'm going to show you, which is 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. Yep, this card is another expensive card. Those 6 cards I'm going to show you now are interchangeable. You can pretty much play hand traps if you want. You can main Crossout Designator if you think you're losing to Nibiru a lot. So yeah, don't take these 6 cards for granted. And they're super expensive as well, so I don't see a lot of people playing them. But Triple Tactics Talent, if you have access to them, these cards are really good. And of course, the 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet, because in Heroes, this card is so much better suited for any other deck. I mean, in Phantom Knights kind of too, because you do have so many cards you want in the graveyard, cards like Malicious, cards like Shadow Mist, and being able to cut your opponent's attack points in half means a much easier game for Trinity as well. So yeah, this card has perfect synergy with the deck. It's much better than Dark Ruler No More. And of course, with cards like Revolt still being in the game, being able to chain something like rather than just outright using a Dark Ruler No More and then getting revolted and summon Shuraig on you, then yeah, this card is much. For the extra deck, we have 1 copy of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, the notorious card from Burst of Destiny, and yes, this card is actually busted. You're going to be seeing this so much, you're gonna get bored of it. So let's explain what this card does. So first of all, for the fusion materials, it requires a level 6 or higher hero monster and a Destiny hero monster. Very easy to summon, you just slap Fusion Destiny and you're done. So monster your opponent controls lose 200 attack for each hero card in your graveyard. So this card just makes Plasma even more formidable, just because the more points you can deduct from your opponent's monster and the more points you can add to Plasma, it just makes it so much harder to just normal summon something and run over it. Sometimes even Pancratops won't be able to run over Plasma, it will have to use its effect to deal with it, so this is another plus. Yeah, but the real kicker for this card is that it has a break short quick effect. So what it does is that you can destroy both 1 card you control and 1 card on the field. So this card is basically an infinite break sword, because if it's destroyed, you can target a card in your Destiny hero in your graveyard, and you're gonna special summon it during the next standby phase. So this card, not only does it pop itself, so you can just infinitely bring it back with its own effect to just have a recurring effect on the field, but it also has synergy with the card I'm not playing with the deck, but you're going to see it a lot in other decks, which is Artifact Scythe with Dagda. So yeah, you can just pop your Scythe, and then not only do you get a pop, but you get an extra deadlock. So yeah, this card is just absolutely broken, and in Heroes, this is no exception, because you can also send Malicious as well. In other engines, you're going to be seeing this with Dasher and Celestial cards I'm not playing in the deck because I don't really think they're good. Especially in a deck like this, if you get to the point of being able to activate Celestial's effect, I think you've already lost a duel, or you already have a broken board on the field, so you can just win without it. So yeah, I think this is just all you need to play. You just send your Denier, you send your Malicious, and you're pretty much good to go. We also play 1 copy of Dangerous. If you've seen in the main deck, I am not playing Dynatag anymore because I've cut Dystopia. I don't think Dystopia is worth playing anymore with Enforcer. Of course, if you don't have access to Enforcer, you still play Dystopia, obviously, but if you have access to Enforcer, there's absolutely no reasonable scenario, unless you want to win in time, which I don't think that this deck should ever strive for, because it just wins very easily or loses very easily with Nibiru. So yeah, your games are going to be done really quickly. So I don't think you need to play Dynatag anymore, because Dystopia is just such an inferior card compared to Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. But Dangerous is still a really good card because of the synergy I mentioned back with Shadow Mist, so you can bring her back with your Liquid Soldier to get your search your Mask Change. Because in a deck like this, where you're not trying to use something like a Scythe, of course summoning Darklaw is a much higher priority than summoning Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, so this is why you need to go for that combo sometimes. For the Masked Heroes, we have 2 copies of Darklaw. Of course, you can play Anki if you want, but I don't think it's necessary anymore, because you can press for game even without it. So just having the second copy of Darklaw, especially when your opponent negates it with something like a Dark Ruler No More, or a Droplet, or an Imperm, if you have another Mask Change, you can just swap around for another Dracula and your opponent is screwed. 1 copy of Acid. You can summon this either with 0 or with Liquid Soldier. Most of the times you're going to be summoning with 0, unless you got extremely interrupted during your own turn, but this card just gives you full coverage against backer decks. 1 copy of Blast. This is here just mainly to dodge Imperms and Veiler with Stratos, but its effect is not bad to spin backer. Sometimes you just force your opponent to reuse those cards, and also you lower your opponent's monster attack points, which is a decent effect, especially when you have Plasma on the field. 1 copy of Malicious Bane. Of course, you have to play this card if you're playing the Evil Hero package, is the only one you need. It's absolutely broken. 1 copy of Sunrise, getting to your Miracle Fusion, also boosting your heroes as well, because this is another way to boost your Plasma so it doesn't get run over by a normal summon monster, and it has the effect that when another hero monster battles, you can also target a card on the field and destroy it, which is another way. This deck has so much distraction that even if your opponent tries to attack, or if they don't with Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, you always have a way to pop their cards. And another way to pop all their monsters is Absolute Zero, being able to go for this with your Miracle Fusion, either Mask Change it or link it away, and then just blow up their opponent's entire monster board. Really good. And 1 copy of Trinity, which is a card that I'm never gonna stop playing in Heroes, because this card just absolutely hands the most free wins. It's basically Utopia Double of any deck that can play Utopia Double, although it's much more consistent and it doesn't require you playing a brick in your deck that when you draw it, that makes the entire play useless. So yeah, this card is absolutely broken, especially combined with Honest News. For the Link monsters, we play 2 copies of Cross Crusader. Basically, you need 2. You can kind of get away with 1, but I don't think the deck has that much of a problem with going for the extra deck issue with a space, so just playing 2 is perfectly fine, getting back to your monsters, and also during the delayed game, you can get back one of your deniers, so you can get back your malicious from the banish zone, so you can use it again, so it's basically using 4 malicious in one. 1 copy of Wonder Driver. Getting back to your mask change is very important, so this is why this card is here, because if you summon your Dark Law, if you can reset your mask change, it just makes your Dark Law so much more resilient, because even if this one Dark Law gets negated, the second one is going to drop and it's going to ruin your opponent's day. 1 copy of Dread Decimator, another way to boost your monsters. This is another way to go for a game if you don't have access to Trinity. This is not a really good card, boosting all of your monsters. And 1 copy of Anaconda. Yes, I know that the deck just locks itself into heroes a lot, but sometimes it doesn't, because you are not going to be able to use Faris every single game. So this is why this card is here, because Destiny Fusion is now so important that if you're just able to drop your Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer on the field, you just win some games automatically. So this is why if the deck doesn't have the space issue, just play Anaconda. It's really good. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Heroes have just been evolving so much, and they're not even done yet. Like I said, in Brothers of Legends, we're gonna get D-Force, and yes, you can be absolutely certain that a card that makes your plasma untargetable and not being able to get died by cards like Lightning Storm, yes, it's going to be a really good card. We're gonna play it in the deck, and of course, when the time comes, we're going to update profile for you. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.